Good morning. It is Saturday, February the 11th, and welcome to another edition of the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Scribbler, your wave reporter, here to discuss with you all things waves, weather, climate, beach lifestyle, the water sports, all the things. But for today, what we are doing is tracking a gathering nor'easter that is expected to impact the Outer Banks today, tomorrow, and into Monday. And already we have strong winds coming out of the northeast. I got down to Jeanette's Pier earlier today, got some good footage for you guys. Check it out on YouTube at my channel Climate Scribbler over on YouTube. And the waves are picking up. We've got some 4.5, maybe even 5 foot swells off of Jeanette's Pier right now with those strong winds coming out of the northeast. Looking at the official anemometers, the wind speed readings showing 26 miles per hour out of the north-northeast at Jeanette's Pier. And up and down the other banks, we've got winds coming out of the north-northeast at between 24 and 30 miles per hour. So strong winds getting almost into the near gale force range. And we do have small craft advisories or gale warnings up and down the other banks from Moorhead City on northward to Nags Head, Kill Devil Hills, Kitty Hawk region, and then on up to the North Carolina Virginia border. Gale watches are in effect. Looking at the NOAA satellite shot provided by the National Hurricane Center, excuse me. Sorry about that. I had a little little sneezing episode. In any case, looking at the satellite shot provided by NOAA and the National Hurricane Center, we do see the storm system forming with a low pressure visible on the satellite shot over the Gulf of Mexico here, that swirl in the upper air. And then the frontal boundary swooping on across the Atlantic Ocean down to into the southeastern states of the United States, and as well as a rather large moisture tap coming in here from the Gulf of Mexico. So a classic formation for a nor'easter. It's got all of the elements gathering together here, and it's got the frontal boundary, the warm front, the cold front, and the low pressure system right here, as well as the feed of moisture off both the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Looking at the satellite shot, the infrared satellite shot, we can see the colder cloud tops in association with this system, the swirl over the Gulf of Mexico, the stormy weather moving in across the southeast US. From the beaches here looking south, you can see some of the stronger precipitation starting to sweep in across the Outer Banks. There's a band that's moving like a squally band that is moving up the Outer Banks that is expected to bring some precipitation to the Outer Banks by noon, and then the stormy heavy rains are expected to build in more consistently later on tonight. Looking down, oops, oh, looks like I nuked the Earth Null School map. Hold on. Looking down at the winds being generated right now on the Earth Null School map. This is a wave model. I'm going to look at winds. Let's go to now. Okay, so looking at winds across the Outer Banks, I did want to show you the wind monitors in Earth Null School showing about 24 mile per hour sustained winds, which is roughly consistent with the observations that I've seen, 24 to 25 mile per hour sustained winds across the Outer Banks. Looking at some local stations, the onshore winds are a bit stronger, running into the 29 to 30 mile an hour range at some locations. But you see these northeasterly winds coming in front of a high pressure system over Virginia. This high is expected to move on out to the northeast. And you do see a very clear low pressure system here starting to form over the Gulf of Mexico. And stronger winds as we approach the front, not yet in the range of gale force, but getting into the near gale force range as the storm gathers. I'm going to show you guys the progression of the storm later, but I did want to show you the base readings for the system. And so also looking at the National Weather Service radar, we have a large field or shield of moisture out ahead of the storm with heavy rains running in from Louisiana in through Mississippi and Alabama, Georgia, Florida Panhandle, and then into the coastal Carolinas as well. And along the coastline, we have small craft advisories out here off of Manio and Nags Head, and then heading on down the coast toward past Oregon Inlet and on toward the east-facing beaches of Hatteras Island. We have gale warnings, and then gale warnings on south to looks like Morehead City, and then just heading on down south along the coastline. And looks like gale warnings extend all the way down to the South Carolina, Georgia border near Savannah. So yeah, gale warnings extending all the way down to Savannah from about Oregon Inlet down to Savannah. So everyone here is under the gun for severe weather, and the marine statement for the waters of the Atlantic are also showing gale warnings as well. So we've just got all of the things engaged, and I do want to show you guys the quantitative precipitation analysis for the next 7 days showing stormy conditions. In effect, most of this precipitation is likely to come from the present storm system and another storm system that is expected to develop later next week. So, but just generally stormy conditions at least for the next 3 to 5 days, and then we'll see what happens after that. All right, so getting down to our local observations, I did get down to the coastline and got an observation both of the increasingly rough surf down there at Jeanette's Pier and the stormy weather moving in up from the south. So getting down to our Google Maps, using Google Maps for informational purposes, we're going to zoom in here on Jeanette's Pier. And we find that according to the wave monitors, waves at Jeanette's Pier are in the range of 2 to 5 feet. We've got a swell, about a 4.5-foot swell, maybe a little bit taller now, coming in off the Atlantic Ocean from the east. That's a primary swell coming in at 5 seconds and the secondary swell coming in at 10 seconds. North-northeast winds at 26 miles per hour. That's strong, and these are expected to maintain or build throughout the day. I'm going to get into some forecasts a little bit later on, but for right now, that's what we got. 26 mile per hour north-northeast winds. Air temperatures in the range of the upper 40s, about 46 right now. Ocean water temperatures warmer with that easterly flow pushing in the warmer waters, 51 degrees Fahrenheit. It is right now, the weather conditions are windy, a chance of rain by noontime as a squally band moves up from the south. And conditions just generally expected to steadily worsen throughout the day with a high of 50 degrees. Most of the heavy precipitation is expected to come later tonight, along with the intensifying low pressure system coming up from the south. All right, so moving on down south to Rodanthe. We're going to head on past Coquina Beach and Body Island Lighthouse. And then we're going to head on down past the Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge as we get on to Hatteras Island. And here at Rodanthe right now, waves are also in the range of 2 to 5 feet, with a primary swell coming at 10 seconds and a secondary swell coming at 5 seconds. The larger waves around 4.5 feet, pushing closer to the 5-foot range. That's why I noted the waves right now are 2 to 5 feet. The surf is building, so 4.5-foot swell with a building surf. That makes 5 feet. At least that's what I'm saying. And I think I'm about correct given the observations that I had early this morning at Jeanette's Pier. So 2 to 5 foot waves Winds coming out of the north-northeast at 29 miles per hour. These are very strong winds getting almost to the near gale force range. Air temperatures about 51 degrees now at Rodanth. Ocean water much warmer at 59 degrees Fahrenheit. It's amazing how much warmer the waters are once you just get a little bit of wind coming in from the east. And all of the ocean water temperatures are warmer just up and down the coastline by at least, looks like about 3 degrees than yesterday. So you get those winds out of the northeast pushing in those warmer waters from the Gulf Stream, and just generally this wave of warmer waters as well as rough conditions. And as with Jeanette's Pier, the weather conditions for today are windy, chance of rain by about the noontime hour with conditions steadily worsening throughout the day. Expected high today at Rodanth of 52 degrees. And then for our last location, we're going to pick Buxton, the big wave spot of the Outer Banks. So heading on down south to Buxton, past Avon Beach. Got some great video at Avon earlier this week. And so, yeah, getting down to Buxton, we find that the waves are in the range of 3 to 6 feet. So building there at Buxton with a primary swell coming in at 6 seconds, secondary swell coming in at 10 seconds. Air temperatures right now 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Weather forecast, rain right now, it's like drizzling right now at Buxton. Rain is expected to get heavier as we head on into the noonday hour. And then windy for the afternoon with an expected high of 55 degrees with conditions steadily worsening throughout the day. I didn't get a wind measure for Buxton, but it's likely in the range of 25 to upper 20 miles per hour there as well. All right, so those are our observations, our local observations. Looking at the longer range forecast, I do just want to note this tendency for much warmer than normal conditions for the US East, particularly for the Mid-Atlantic. And this 8 to 14 day temperature outlook is really starting to double down on those much warmer than normal conditions for the US East. And out west, though, things are expected to be cooler than normal, particularly for the Southwest. And as we get on into southwestern California and that region. So we have this dipole of anomalies between west to east, and sometimes this can generate a stormy battleground between the two, and we see that in the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook as above normal rainfall is expected for a large swath of the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys, and above normal precipitation for generally above normal precipitation for like a much larger region from the Appalachians westward to the central US north of Texas, and then a large portion of the western US, including parts of the desert Southwest. So definitely keep a weather eye on this. Dipoles can be a troublesome feature in our weather and produce conditions that are outside the norm, both as far as warm weather and cold weather, but also in the form of storminess. And we'll just have to keep an eye on this as the Climate Prediction Center is showing this temperature differential across the US, which could help to kick up some stormy conditions. For the near term, today we are looking at thunderstorm potentials for the US Southeast, particularly into the Florida Panhandle. And then tomorrow we got a little bit of thunderstorm potential for the Outer Banks region. Nothing too crazy, but we may want to keep an eye on things as there is a convective potential for tomorrow. And the 4 to 8 day outlook shows potential for severe weather for the Mississippi River region on days 5 and 6. We'll have to keep an eye on that as well. All right, so getting on into, I do want to look at, actually, let's look at the global forecast system model. I just want to show you the progression of this expected nor'easter. All right, so right now we've got this storm gathering over the Gulf. The models have so far been pretty much spot on, and I'm going to go ahead and advance this model for you guys. Let's put it a little bit more. Yeah, that's about right. So heading on into midnight tonight, looks like the storm gathers steam over Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. Then kind of just meanders through the early day on Sunday with a strong onshore flow here in the Outer Banks. And then the energy by Sunday evening shifts offshore with some likely severe weather by Sunday evening. And then the low moves on up the coast to harry the mid-Atlantic and then steadily heads on out to sea by Monday afternoon and deepens to the 980 millibar range, so pretty strong low by that time as it heads on out to sea. So for the Outer Banks for Sunday and into Monday, a nor'easter type event with likely gale force winds for large regions of the Outer Banks here, and some likely rather rough surf. So let's get back to the models. I do want to show you the progression of this storm as far as wind generation goes over the next day. So starting at present, we're going to advance the wind model for the global forecast system. As the storm gathers, this will be at around 7 p.m. today. And actually, you know what? Let's do clouds as well, so you can see where the clouds are. All right, so 29 mile per hour winds, and you can see the cloud field around the storm. This is in the model. And yeah, by 7 p.m. looking pretty cloudy here in the Outer Banks as well. Possible rain at that time. And then as we get later on into the night, early morning hours on Sunday, we have what looks actually like almost like a double barrel low, a low here and a low here with rather heavy conditions as far as rainfall for the Outer Banks and a band of strong winds in the near gale force range running in through Morehead City here early in the morning. This is a rather coarse model. I'm going to advance this hour by hour as we get more winds coming in off the east and rains gathering here in the Outer Banks near gale force conditions by early in the morning on Sunday at around the 6 o'clock time frame. Rather substantial in the near gale force range, just offshore here. And then as the energy transfers to a low off the Outer Banks, we continue to have strong winds coming in off the North Atlantic. And you know, what's interesting here is the winds, yeah, near gale force range in some locations, but nothing too crazy, at least in this model. And then as we get into the midday on Sunday, winds getting closer to the gale force range, and yep, okay. And here off of Manio, looks like Manio Duck, Virginia Beach, winds running from strong to gale force just offshore as the storm develops. Looks like the winds north might be a bit stronger than the winds south, but nonetheless, a rather stormy condition here for the Outer Banks throughout Sunday as we get a rather classic nor'easter. And then as we get later into the day on Sunday, the storm shifts off more toward the Delmarva with a bit of a break here in the Outer Banks. And then as the storm transitions out into the open waters into the day on Monday, we get more of a northerly wind flow here, strong winds coming out of the north early in the day on Monday, and then northwest, and also in the near gale force range as well on the backside of these low pressure systems. And then as we get further into the day on Monday, the storminess and the cloudiness heads offshore and then out into the Maritimes, with winds starting to tamp down on Monday by the noonday hour, and then just getting rather calm as we get into late Monday and into early Tuesday. All right, so that's the general progression of the nor'easter. Thankfully, it does not look like this thing is going to be too crazy, but it does look like a gale is gathering for the Outer Banks as we look toward it. Now, I do want to get down to the wave models, and right now we are seeing waves in the near offshore environment in the range of about 5 to 6 feet just offshore here. And then by tomorrow, the waves are expected to kick up into the 8 to 9 foot range in the near offshore environment. And then as we get on into Monday, waves kicking up to, looks like in the 8 to 9 foot range as well, with a swell coming in out of the north and northeast. And then as we head on into Tuesday, the waves tamp back down. Tuesday is going to be a generally milder day with waves coming directly into shore in the range of 3 to 4 feet. And this condition looks like a good wave condition. It's a calm day. These waves are likely to be glassy. So by the time we get back into Tuesday and we get out of the storm event, the waves are likely to be rather nice, although nothing too big as we get on into Tuesday and then into Wednesday. Looks like waves tamping down a bit into the 3 to 4 foot range, but likely still rideable. Hopefully not getting too small. Looks like we might get a good 2 day spate on Tuesday and into Wednesday on the backside of the storm. Depending on how strong the storm gets out here off of the northeast, we might get a better swell. But right now we're looking at probably 2 to 4 foot, 3 to 4 foot waves coming in toward the Outer Banks on Tuesday and Wednesday. All right, so that's the wave report for today. Thank you for joining me. Looks like we are looking into the teeth of a bit of a gale force nor'easter. So far, the forecast doesn't look too terrible.